of any kind. All right. Thank you so much. You may put your hands down. Hi, I'm Aubrey, and the topic of my capstone is advertisements and marketing on social media, but more specifically, the psychological, behavioral, and financial effects of impulse buying, which are triggered by these advertisements we are exposed to through social media every day. According to a recent study from the team at Data Reportal, 5.66 billion people, or 68.7% of the global population, use social media. The first largely successful social media platform was created in 2003 and called MySpace, as stated in a 2019 article published on Wikipedia. The success and positive feedback from the rapidly increasing number of new users at the time allowed for other platforms with similar opportunities to connect online to gain popularity. The major social media platforms today are Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, which were all created between 2005 and 2016. So what is an impulse buy anyways? An impulse buy can be defined as something you buy suddenly and without thinking carefully, according to the Cambridge Dictionary. Many people mistakenly perceive their past and present purchases as normal, rather than acknowledging the chance that some of them could have been impulsive, especially if there was a driven urge and want for the item that was bought. Impulse buying isn't something new. In fact, some studies date back over 80 years on impulsive purchases, according to a journal published by Cambridge University Press by Rice and Zaho. They also say that impulse buying depends on multiple factors, many of which have to do with the buyer's personal life, emotional state, and well-being. Clearly, there's not a single factor that makes the difference between a normal and impulsive purchase. However, it is multiple factors that make up this difference, and some of them are completely uncontrollable for the consumer. It is also important to note that these purchases can be made both in person and while shopping online. Whether a person is more likely to make an impulse buy in person or online is typically dependent on multiple factors, including if they are a more sensory or visually oriented person. However, an article on the factors of impulse buying in consumers by Isabel Rodriguez says the impulse purchases arise from sensory experiences, so purchases made in physical stores tend to be more impulsive than purchases made online. So as I've stated above, if you're more of a sensory-driven person, then you may find that you're more likely to make impulsive purchases in person. I would say in stores such as like TJ Maxx, when they have stuff at the front compared to online. But she also says that impulsive purchases occur when there's a sudden and strong emotional desire, a reactive behavior that is characterized by low cognitive control. This focuses more on the connection and effects of behavior and psychology to impulse buying and how there's a strong cause and effect between the two. So to be honest, I do have personal experience with online shopping and impulse buying. Before I started my capstone project, I spent a lot of time scrolling through social media. Although this is still true, as you can see from the picture on the left of the screen, my screen time at the beginning of the school year was at an average of 8 hours and 1 minute a day. Just to put that into perspective, that is 1/3 of my entire day spent on my phone. If you now look at the picture on the right, you can see that my current screen time for this week is at an average of 3 hours and 40 minutes. From my research findings, I began to see advertising and marketing tactics on social media differently. The recognition of the purpose and intent behind the ads I see on social media has greatly helped me reduce my screen time and purchases made. I used to be the type of person who was easily influenced to buy new and popular clothing and products just because I had seen them on social media. I often wondered what made me so convinced to purchase something in the moment, without considering important factors such as the reliability of the ad, the cost of the product and shipping, and without reading authentic customer reviews. Did you know companies personalize advertisements for you based on the information they collect from your online presence? It's true. Many companies use this to their advantage, hoping that you will be interested in what they're advertising and make an impulsive purchase of their product. So how exactly are they able to know you and what you like? Well, these companies track their users across different websites by using tracking pixels, cookies, fingerprints, and location. From there, the information is sold and traded throughout different websites, making it harder to spot a personalized ad versus a normal one that just happened to be a product you like. It is also important to note that these companies have access to unnecessary information about you that they keep stored and pass on with the rest of your personal info. Now, you may be wondering, how exactly do these companies use this information about their users? Well, this information that they get from the websites to gather on their users is surprisingly in-depth. An article posted on the Federal Trade Commission, an official website of the United States government, also known as the FTC, says these profiles can include information about your interests, habits, and even inferences about your personality. Hearing this alone informs users that these companies most likely keep every little bit of information that you have put onto these different websites. The relationship between personalized advertisements and impulse buying is more close than many people think. In fact, according to the FTC, advertisers use this information to deliver personalized ads, which can make you more likely to buy something. This directly supports the correlation between curated advertisements and impulsive purchases made. But this isn't the only reason these companies want your personal information. Companies track your online activity and profile to keep track of other things, such as the websites you like to frequently visit, how much time you spend on those sites, and what type of device and browser you are using. No ordinary advertisement is going to cut it these days in our technology-driven world. The advertising market for brands has no doubt become much more competitive, forcing them to come up with new ways to make their products successful. According to research by F.A. Cavas from her article on social media attributes on impulse buying behavior, she says entertainment and informativeness were found to have the strongest impact on consumers' impulse buying tendencies, meaning that when an advertisement is more visually appealing and catches your eye, it is more likely to make a consumer want to purchase it, along with ads that directly show the purpose of their product and shed light on the importance of it. What sets good marketing of a product apart from not so good marketing heavily depends on the entertainment factor, as it is typically within the first few seconds of seeing an advertisement that we decide whether we're engaged or not. A study conducted by Zaitin Fang on the significance of advertising on impulse buying discusses the importance of entertainment factors in online ads and how it positively affects the consumer's experience and urge to buy the product advertised. According to a recent study conducted by the CDC, which stands for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, on the daily screen time use in teenagers, they found that 50.4% of them had a daily screen time of 4 or more hours. Social media has clearly become a sort of addiction and bad habit for teenagers and adults. The more time we spend using social media, gradually we are all exposed to more and more ads, which puts us at higher risk of making an impulsive purchase. Impulse buying releases dopamine into your brain and body, also known as the feel-good chemical. And although the feeling can be addictive, dopamine itself is not. In an article written by Crystal Rapel, published on Healthline, she says, dopamine is one of the many factors that can contribute to addiction. Contrary to popular belief, you can't be addicted to dopamine, but it does play an important role in motivating you to seek out pleasurable experiences. This could be a reasonable explanation as to why someone may continue to impulsively buy even if they recognize their issue. If a habit such as impulse buying continues, it becomes a behavioral issue where you're seeking constant gratification. The mere exposure effect in psychology, which can be defined as a phenomenon where people develop a preference for familiar things through repeated exposure, can be closely related to social media algorithms, as the more scrolling you do, the more ads you're exposed to. There is no simple solution to completely prevent making impulsive purchases. However, from the research and interviews, there are ways to limit your habits with impulsive spending. These can include being mindful when using social media and trying to skip or ignore advertisements you may come across. Applying self-control and practicing it when using social media can train your brain to not pay any mind to the ads when you see them, which over time will greatly help you reduce any urge to impulse buy. Besides this, reducing the amount of time spent on social media, as I've mentioned that I've been doing, can be just as effective. For my interviews, I conducted a total of 3, with 2 of them being teachers here at the St. Johnsbury Academy and the other being my mom, Megan Gibson. I chose to interview Mr. Levesque because he teaches psychology, and since a focus point in my capstone is the psychological effects of impulse buying, I knew his insight and responses to my interview questions would be exceptionally useful. I also interviewed Chef Hale, and I chose to interview him because he unintentionally helped me choose my capstone topic by discussing the phenomenon that our phones listen to us. a common misconception that this is how companies are able to advertise products to us that we're interested in. Another reason I interviewed Jeff Hale is because I'm in his personal finance class, and knowing he is educated on social media advertisements and their purpose and has a lot to say about them, he was a great fit for this interview. Love you, Jeff Hale. Last, I decided to interview my mom, Megan Gibson, as I know she has firsthand experience with impulse buying from social media, and as a frequent user of social media platforms, her insight and feedback would be especially beneficial for my capstone. For my interviews, I asked the same 5 questions to each interviewee. My questions asked if they use social media of any sort, if they thought social media advertisements specifically targeted impulse buying and how, if they had experiences when making an impulse purchase, if they thought there were any psychological, behavioral, and/or financial effects from impulse buying, and if they did, I asked for an example. The last question I asked was if they had any tactics they would like to share to recognize targeted ads to prevent future impulse buying. Although all responses I received were unique, there were a few important patterns, such as they all used social media of some form, they had all seen or given in to targeted advertisements, and they had all made an impulsive purchase before. The responses I received from my interviews I conducted helped me dig deeper into my research and put into perspective how this growing issue affects a large majority. One of the main reasons I chose this topic to focus on for my capstone presentation is that I found a genuine interest in how companies can use different forms of marketing and advertisement to increase their sales. This also led me to dive deeper into the psychological effects of social media and impulse buying, because I've taken psychology here already and I'm currently taking AP psychology. Another reason I chose to focus my capstone on this topic is because, as I've previously mentioned, I have personal experience with impulse buying, both in person and on social media. I knew before I chose my topic that I wanted my capstone project to be something that I could relate to and learn about to educate others on. Since completing my research on my topic, my view on social media and the growing marketing has changed. I'm now much more aware when I see advertisements while scrolling and have been able to instill more self-control when it comes to wanting to make impulsive purchases. The feasibility of my capstone project depended on the specific type of research I conducted. Since I focused on the psychological, behavioral, and financial effects of impulse buying triggered by targeted ads, I was able to find a sufficient amount of information on my topic to educate myself and my audience. The limitations I faced while working on my capstone were trying to find non-opinion-based articles that were strictly fact and data-based rather than having a bias, which would skew the purpose of my project. I strived to gather generalized and specific information and data for my presentation to ensure that I was able to adequately teach my audience members about personalized advertisements and how they relate to impulse buying. A few ways you can prevent or lessen impulsive purchases made are to be aware of urgent ads that advertise a limited stock of product left, as these can be purposely misleading to make consumers want to buy it now rather than take their time and think about it. This is a common tactic used by brands to make faster and higher sales, many of which being impulsive purchases. Another way you can lessen the amount of impulsive purchases made is to implement a 24-hour rule. This is where, after you find a product you're thinking about purchasing, you wait 24 hours and come back to see if you really want it, because after the waiting period, the initial impulse will wear off and it will be easier to tell if you actually want the item. Or a different approach could be not saving your card information in your phone, which forces you to manually enter it each time you're thinking about purchasing something, which adds an extra barrier and more time to think about the purchase you're about to make. Despite the fact that there are multiple factors that make up targeted advertisements, there are some you can look out for when you're shopping, whether it be in person or online. According to an article by Will Moore on how to stop impulse buying for in-person shopping specifically, he suggests creating a budget, using cash instead of card, making a list and sticking to it, and tracking your spending. As for online shopping, in an article by Nidhi Kulkarni, on impulsive buying behaviors triggered by social media ads, she educates readers on things to look out for to prevent impulsive buying while scrolling, such as flash sales, time-limited offers, influencer promotions, and peer recommendations through likes, shares, and comments. Keeping in mind and looking out for those common advertising tactics can help you lessen your spending on impulsively purchased items. The goal for my capstone project is to educate and make my audience aware of the specifics behind every sponsored advertisement they see and how to implement more self-control into their daily routine while still being able to use and enjoy social media as they did before. Bringing light to the importance of self-control is crucial because, as stated in a peer-reviewed article on Science Direct by Komal Shaman, low self-control is associated with impulsive behaviors such as social media impulsiveness and impulse buying. Knowing that over half the population uses social media and is exposed to targeted advertisements every day, I wanted to create a poster for the outcome of my capstone project to bring awareness to impulsive buying induced by these advertisements. The poster includes information and research from my capstone in a colorful and eye-catching way in hopes that I could use an entertainment factor that many ads do to draw attention of people from my school. Since my goal of my capstone is to educate my audience on personalized ads and impulse buying, I thought a poster would be a good way to educate the non-audience members from my school on impulse buying from social media and how to be aware and have more self-control. If you're interested in checking it out, it will be posted around campus throughout the next week. Thank you so much for listening. Here are my sources. Are there any questions?
You mentioned your interviewers were all kind of adults. Did you think about reaching out to? Did you find any information about any generational differences in terms of are young people more likely to be impulse buyers or anything along those lines?
So I looked into that a little bit. I didn't do too much research on that as it wasn't the main focus of my capstone. However, I did find some studies on it that showed that a lot of teenagers do spend a lot of time on social media, so they're more prone to it. And I just thought it would be good to interview some adults to kind of have that comparison. And I liked my results. Yeah.
Was it hard for you to adapt from a lot of hours on social media to little hours?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Was it hard for you to adapt from a lot of hours on social media to little hours?
It was sort of a more gradual process, but yeah, I think I've kind of just done it without thinking much, just because the school year started. I think my screen time was probably so high because it was the summer and I was transitioning into the school year. However, I think 8 hours a day is a bit outrageous, and yeah, just trying to find other things to do to keep myself off my phone. I didn't find it that hard.
Audrey, if you're an advertiser, from your research, what's my number one technique to get you to impulse buy?
To get me to?
Yeah, given your research into impulse buying, imagine I'm an advertiser. What would be my number one technique to get you to impulse buy?
I would say probably, as a brand, hiring an influencer to make videos for you with a product definitely has proven to be very successful. Something, if it's just like a still photo, maybe something that says limited stock, very colorful. Definitely having like everything like in caps. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
I noticed that you use, again, I'm similar to Ms. Reed's question, you use 3 adults for your interviews. Do you notice any similar apps or trends between them like that? Or are there any other greater sources that you use that will display any larger trends between impulse buying on different apps and social media?
From my interviews, I found out that the adults typically like to use like more of YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, but they still said that they experience impulse buying on there and advertisements that wanted to induce that, and so I didn't really find a difference.
What social media platform do you think advertises the most and has like the most like grab or attention?
I would say TikTok for sure with the videos. A lot of people are kind of jumping in your face, like clickbait almost, but it starts playing when you scroll. Especially since the sponsored videos are a little bit like harder to spot now, that they can just have like the little sponsored thing at the bottom and it still shows their profile. It doesn't look so much like an ad, and that pulls a lot of people in.
Is there like a certain category of product that is like more prone to this?
That it's what?
Like more prone to the impulse buying and like
Product?
yeah, like a certain like category.
I'd say definitely a lot of women's products like makeup, hair tools, all that. I'm always seeing stuff advertised. I see like random like things for wigs all the time, just like random, but no, it's usually makeup and people are just raving over it, and yeah, people give in. Okay.